Picture a room smaller than a modern two-car garage, 16 feet by 18. Now put a family of 7 inside it. Add a fireplace that is never allowed to go out, not in July, not ever. A floor made of split logs with the bark still on the underside. One window covered with greased paper instead of glass, and a ladder of wooden pegs driven into the wall, climbing to a loft where the children sleep under the roof shakes, close enough to the weather that on winter mornings they wake with snow sifted across the quilt. That's a log cabin on the Indiana frontier in 1838. 1 room, 1 fire, 7 people. Everything they eat, wear, burn and believe has to come out of the forest around them or be carried in on somebody's back. It is the loneliest crowded room in America. A place where you can go 2 months without seeing a face that isn't family, and where a stranger knocking at dusk is the biggest event of the season. We're going back there tonight, not as tourists peering at a preserved cabin behind a velvet rope, reading a little brass plaque. We're living it. 1 family, 1 room, 1 full year. Everything they would have seen, smelled, heard and survived. A quick word on how we do this, because I want to be honest with you. The cabin is real. Every practice in this story, the raising, the chinking, the borrowed fire, the sugar camp, the hog killing, the fever, comes out of the memoirs and county histories the old settlers left behind. The people who lived this as children and wrote it down as grey-haired men and women half a century later. The dates are real. The prices are real. The work is real. But the eyes I'm going to lend you belong to a girl the records never name, a composite stitched together from 100 settlers' daughters, the old histories mention in passing and never follow. The room is documented. The girl is borrowed. I'll always tell you which is which. So, I make these history stories, and honestly I've given up trying to figure out whether anyone actually sleeps to them, or whether you're all just weirdos who enjoy hearing about bear grease hog-killing day, and what it means when the fire goes out in January. Either way, subscribe if you feel like it. Pull the blanket up. Get comfortable. Here we go. Your hand is in the ashes before your eyes are properly open. You're kneeling at the hearth in the dark and your fingers are moving through the grey the way you'd feel for eggs under a broody hen. Careful. Palm down. The surface ash is cold and soft as flour and it clings to your wrist and it smells the way it always smells before dawn. Burnt and mineral and faintly sour. The smell of a fire that has been asked to sleep all night and isn't sure it wants to wake. Then, under the cold, you feel it. Heat, not flame, not even glow. Just a warmth pressing up against your palm through 2 inches of ash, the way a cat presses against your leg under a table. Last night before bed, your mother buried the coals, raked them into a heap, packed the ashes over them tight, smoothed the grey mound with the flat of the shovel like she was tucking in a child. Banking the fire, it's called. And now, on the last cold morning of March, in the year 1838, the most important question in your entire world is whether that buried heart is still alive. You take the iron shovel and open the mound, gently, the way you'd open a wound you didn't want to see. Ash rolls back, and there they are, 3 coals, maybe 4, dull orange, breathing. When the cold air touches them, they brighten just slightly, like they're glad to see you. Your shoulders come down from around your ears. You didn't even know they were up there. Because here is the thing you understand at 13, the way town children understand nothing at all. There are no matches in this cabin. There is a flint and steel in a tin box on the mantel shelf, and you have watched your father fight it on a damp day, striking and striking, crouched over a scrap of charred linen, his knuckles bleeding, saying words your mother pretends not to hear. It can take half an hour. It can fail. And if the coals die and the flint fails, somebody, probably you because your legs are young, puts on every wrap in the cabin and walks the half-mile through the trees to the coal place with a kettle and borrows fire, carries it home smoking, walking fast, sheltering it from the wind with your body like it's an infant. You've done it once, last winter. The old settlers remembered doing it their whole childhoods. Some of them remembered walking 3 miles for coals, both ways through snow, because in the early days a neighbour's fire was the closest thing to a match factory Indiana had. Borrowing fire, they called it, and nobody thought it strange because everybody had lent it and everybody had begged it. But not this morning. This morning the coals held. You lean in close, so close the warmth touches your face, and you begin to feed them. First the shredded bark, dry curls of shagbark hickory from the basket by the hearth, laid on light as feathers. Then you blow, long, steady, low, the way your mother taught you, not puffing like you're blowing out a candle, but breathing like you're trying not to wake someone. The coals go bright, brighter. A curl of bark catches with a sound like a whisper tearing, and a little yellow flame stands up in the darkness, and just like that, the day is allowed to begin. You sit back on your heels on the puncheon floor and let the flame climb into the small sticks, then the split wood, and you listen to the room behind you. 6 people breathing. That's the sound of your world before dawn. 6 sleepers in one room, layered like the smells. Your father's breath, slow and heavy, from the big bed in the corner. Your mother's, lighter, next to him, with the baby tucked against her. And from the loft above your head, through the gaps in the loose boards, your brothers and your sister, Daniel, 16, who snores exactly like the dog, Lucy, 8, Willis, 5, who sleeps sideways and steals the quilt, which you know because until 20 minutes ago you were up there with them, in the bed you all share under the slope of the roof. Yeah, you share a bed. All 4 of you, and in January you're glad of it. Privacy is a thing that exists in Cincinnati, maybe. Nobody in this cabin has ever had a room of their own, or a bed of their own, or a silence of their own. And if you want to be alone, you go to the spring or the woods, which is what the woods are for. And the smells. It's never one smell, a cabin. It's layers, and you could read them blindfolded. Wood smoke first, in everything. Your hair, the quilts, the walls themselves. You will smell of smoke your whole life and never once notice it. Then the sides of bacon and the venison hams hanging from the rafter hooks, salty and deep. The bear grease your mother rubs into boots and hinges and chapped hands, faintly wild, faintly sweet. Wet wool drying on pegs, the sharp green smell of the firewood stacked inside overnight, and under it all, people. 7 bodies that bathe in a wooden tub by the fire on Saturdays and not otherwise, and you'd only notice that smell if it were gone. Welcome to the Indiana forest. Late March, 1838. Morning still an hour away, and outside the greased paper window the woods are so dark and so deep that the darkness feels less like a time of day and more like a place. Your name is Sarah. You're 13 years old. You were born in Kentucky, on a worn-out farm your father rented from another man, and you came north across the Ohio River 3 years ago in a wagon behind 2 oxen, with a plough, an axe, a rifle, a Bible, a clock, and a rooster in a willow cage riding on top of everything like a king. Your father drove. Your mother walked carrying Willis. You and Daniel and Lucy walked behind, driving the cow. Back in Kentucky, everyone said Indiana was nothing but woods and fever. They weren't wrong. But the land here was Congress land. $1.25 an acre, cash at the land office, and a man could own 80 acres outright for $100. Own it, not rent it, not crop it on shares for a landlord. Own it, in his own name, in a book in Indianapolis. Your father had $104 sewn into the waistband of his trousers. That's why you're here. That whole calculation, $100, 80 acres, a lifetime of another man's rent against a wall of trees and a shaking fever. That's the entire story of how Indiana filled up with people. The state is barely older than your brother Daniel. It came into the Union in 1816, and when the old settlers said the word improvement, they didn't mean a new porch. They meant sunlight. They meant one more acre of forest killed and open to the sky. But sunlight is later. Sunlight is years. First, always, there is the fire, and the fire needs wood, and the day needs starting. You swing the crane out from the chimney, the iron arm that pivots over the flames, and hang the big kettle on its hook, and dip water into it from the bucket by the door, and swing it back over the fire to heat. The kettle is the family's third most valuable possession, after the rifle and the oxen. It came from Kentucky wrapped in quilts like a grandmother. The water in the bucket is skimmed with ice, you know, because you broke it with your knuckle and the cold bit clear up your arm, and you did not make a sound, because 6 people were sleeping, and in a one-room cabin, the first rule of every single thing you do, the rule under all the other rules, is that everyone else is always right there. You will never once in your life be more than 18 feet from your entire family. Hold that thought. We'll come back to it. By the time the fire is talking properly, snapping, hissing where the green stick sweats, throwing your shadow huge and jumpy across the log wall, your mother is up. You didn't hear her get up. You never do. She's just suddenly beside you in a wool petticoat, with a shawl crossed over her chest, hair still in its nighttime braid, hanging the smaller pot beside your kettle, and saying quietly, "Coal's held, then?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good girl." 2 words. She's already turning away, already at the meal barrel. But you'll carry those 2 words around all day like a warm stone in your pocket, and she knows it, which is why she said them. That's your mother. She's 34 years old, and she has buried 2 children, one in Kentucky, one on the road, and she can shoot, sew, doctor, butcher, spin, weave, preach if pressed, and make a meal for 7 out of cornmeal and nerve. In the old settlers' memoirs, when the writers reach for the person who held the whole enterprise together, it is almost never the man with the axe. It's her. It's always her. The books written 50 years later go soft and grave when they talk about the frontier mother, and for once the books are right. She scoops cornmeal from the barrel into the pot of water, salts it from the salt gourd on the shelf, and you both hear it, the dry scraping sound the gourd makes now, the sound of almost empty. And she says nothing, and you say nothing, but the sound goes on the list. Salt is bought. Salt is money. Salt comes from the settlement 12 miles east, and the trip is an event, and the gourd says the event is coming soon, and in the fall, when the hogs are killed, salt will be the difference between a winter of meat and a winter of nothing. Remember the salt gourd. It's small and it's dusty, and the whole year turns on it. Mush. That's breakfast. Cornmeal mush, boiled thick, eaten with milk if the cow is giving, and molasses if you're lucky, and you have eaten it. Wait for it, approximately 1,000 times. Because on the frontier, corn isn't a crop. Corn is the crop. And when I say corn, I need you to understand what that means in Indiana in 1838. This isn't a vegetable that appears beside your meat. This is the meat's food and your food and the food of every animal you own. You eat it as mush, as johnny cake baked on a board tilted before the fire, as dodgers, as hominy, as roasting ears in August. The horses eat it, the hogs are made of it, and what's left over gets hauled to the settlement or turned into whiskey, because whiskey keeps and corn doesn't. The old settlers remembered whole years, the first year on a claim usually, when corn in some form was every meal of every day, and they remembered exactly what that felt like in the mouth, and several of them, writing as old men, admitted they could no longer look a johnny cake in the face. You won't get that choice for a while yet. The light through the paper window has gone from nothing to a dirty grey, which is as close to sunrise as that window ever announces. Paper greased with lard stretched over a sash. It lets in a soft honey-dim glow on a bright day, and keeps out most of the wind, and it is not glass, and everybody knows it is not glass. Glass costs money and rides badly in wagons. There are exactly 2 glass windows within 5 miles of you, and both of them are at the coal place, and Granny Coal keeps them polished like the crown jewels, and every woman who visits looks at those 2 little panes with an expression your mother could translate for you but won't. Appearances matter, even out here, maybe especially out here, where there is so little to appear with. Now the cabin wakes for real, and you'd best get out of the way. Your father comes out of the corner bed already talking. He wakes like a man resuming a sentence he started yesterday. Daniel, stock. And a groan floats down from the loft, and the pegs in the wall creak one after another as your brother comes down them backward, hair like a haystack in a wind. The pegs are the loft's only stairs, stout hickory pins driven into auger holes in the log wall, polished smooth by hands. You could climb them asleep. You have nearly every morning of your life here. Daniel takes the milk pig in and the feed basket, and goes out into the cold to the cow and the oxen and the door. Pay attention to the door for a moment, because the door is a whole civics lesson. It's thick oak boards, pinned with wooden pins, hung on wooden hinges that groan like an old man sitting down. There is no iron lock. There is no bolt you'd recognise. There is a wooden latch on the inside, and a hole bored through the door above it, and through the hole runs a leather string tied to the latch. If the string is hanging outside, anyone can pull it, lift the latch and walk in, and that is the point. A traveller, a neighbour, a preacher, a stranger in the rain. The hanging string is the whole frontier saying, "Come in, we're decent people." At night you pull the string inside and the door is locked as it gets. If you've been with this channel a while, you might remember the night we spent on locks and doors, and how much of history slept behind nothing stronger than a wooden latch and the assumption of good neighbours. Well, here it is in its purest American form, the latch string. The old settlers used it as a figure of speech their whole lives. The latch string is always out for you, long after they had brass locks and front porches, because it meant something no lock ever meant. It meant, we remember when all we had was each other. Remember the latch string too, like the salt gourd. Small things first. That's how this works. While the mush thickens, take the tour. It won't take long. 16 feet by 18, remember. You can cross your entire home in 5 strides, and your mother can supervise every square foot of it without turning her head much. The walls are logs, unhewn on the outside, flattened a little on the inside with a broadaxe, and between every log runs a seam of chinking. Split sticks and wood chips wedged into the cracks, then daubed over with clay mixed with straw and water. You helped mix that clay, barefoot in a trough, which is the most fun this farmer's ever officially sanctioned. The daubing is smooth and grey, and it cracks and falls in chunks every year as the logs shift and the rain finds it, and every fall before the cold the whole family patches it new. That's not a chore, by the way. That's the difference between a wall and a sieve, and in January you can find every spot you missed by the white feather of snow lying under it on the floor. The floor is puncheons, logs split in half, flat side up, hewed smoothish, bark side down on the dirt. Smoothish. Your bare feet know every ridge and every gap. The loose one by the water bucket that rocks and thumps, the wide crack near the hearth that eats needles and buttons and once a silver half-dime, which caused an excavation your father supervised like it was a well going down. In the earliest cabins the old settlers remembered, there was no floor at all but swept earth, and a puncheon floor was the first rung of the ladder up. Your mother has a puncheon floor and intends, some day, in the fullness of years, to have boards. When she says the word boards, there's a small silence after it, the way there is after a hymn. The fireplace fills most of one end wall, stone up past your head, then sticks and clay the rest of the way. A chimney built like a basket and plastered like a swallow's nest, standing a little apart from the wall at the top, so that if it ever catches fire, and stick chimneys do, a man can push it over with a pole before the cabin goes with it. There are 2 poles leaning ready by the corner. Nobody has ever had to explain them to you. On the mantel shelf, the clock from Kentucky, which your father winds each night with the gravity of a ship's captain. The Bible with the family's births and deaths written in the front in 3 different inks. A fistful of goose quills. The almanac, and the tin box with the flint and steel and charred linen inside. The hearth fire has not been started from that box since the day it was first lit in this cabin 3 years ago. The fire is never allowed to die, so the box mostly just sits there, a little god nobody prays to, insurance against a morning everyone plans never to have. 1 bed below, built into the corner, its rails pegged right into the wall logs. The trundle underneath, where Lucy sleeps when the loft is too cold even for children. The big chest, the spinning wheels, 2 of them, the great wheel for wool, the little flax wheel waiting by the far wall like patient animals. The loom takes the darkest corner, your mother's loom, that your father and Daniel built to a neighbour's pattern in one long winter, and on it, right now, a length of linsey woolsey is growing an inch at a time, grey-brown, the exact colour of this whole country in November. And that's it. That's the inventory of a life. A visitor from town would stand in the doorway and see poverty. Stand where you're standing, though. 13 years old, mush spoon in your hand, watching the firelight move over every single thing your family owns, and you see something the visitor can't. Everything in this room was carried here, or grown here, or built here by hands, you know. There is nothing in this room that doesn't have a story stuck to it. Townhouses have things nobody remembers buying. This cabin doesn't have a splinter in it that somebody didn't sweat for. That's not romance, by the way. You'd trade a great deal of meaning for 1 glass window. But it's true all the same, and on good evenings you feel it like heat off the hearth. Breakfast is mush and milk, eaten by the fire, tin spoons in wooden bowls, everybody's elbows in everybody's ribs. Your father prays over it. Short. God in this family is thanked briskly, like a busy neighbour. And then the day divides the way it always divides. Out or in. Out is your father and Daniel. Stock, wood, fences, field. In is your mother and you. Fire, food, water, baby, garden, and everything else on earth. Lucy is 8, so Lucy is your deputy. She hauls chips, minds Willis, feeds the hens, and complains in that order. Willis is 5, and his job is to survive being 5, which in a clearing full of axes, snakes, kettles of boiling water, and a large open fire is a genuine occupation. The baby, Thomas, 10 months, currently attempting to eat a wooden spoon, rules the cabin from a hollowed-out sugar trough that serves as his cradle, because a sugar trough was what there was the week he was born, and the old settlers would nod at that. Half the frontier was rocked in a sugar trough. Governors were rocked in sugar troughs, and later put it in their campaign speeches. Your first outdoor task is water, and water is the spring, and the spring is 140 steps down the hollow. You have counted in every weather because counting is company. 2 wooden buckets on a neck yoke. The path is mud over frost this morning, slick as soap, and you go down it in your father's old boots. Coat over your work dress, breath smoking, and the forest stands all around you in the grey light and drips. I want you to see this forest, because everything else in this story lives inside it. It is not woods the way anyone alive today knows woods. It is the great hardwood forest of the old Northwest, and it has been growing since the ice left, and it has never once been cut. Oaks and tulip poplars 150 feet tall, trunks 4, 5, 6 feet through, pillars going up grey and bare out of sight, so high that the crows in the top sound like they're calling from another county. Sycamores along the creek so big that the old settlers remembered stabling a horse inside a hollow one, or a family of 8 sheltering in one for a week while their cabin went up. And those stories are documented so many times in so many counties that you can stop smiling at them. The canopy closes overhead in summer like a roof, so that a traveller could ride, people said, from the Ohio River halfway up the state in shade. And noon on the forest floor was a kind of green dusk. Under it, the world is brown silence and standing water, and the smell of a century of leaves. Nothing about it is a park. It is beautiful the way the ocean is beautiful, which is to say, it does not care about you. It was here first, and everything your family is doing every day with every tool it owns is a war against it. You fill the buckets where the spring runs clear over gravel, cold enough to make the bones of your hands ache, hang them on the yoke, and start back up. 60 pounds of water, more or less, balanced on your neck and shoulders, uphill, in mud. Your breath goes ragged in the middle stretch. The yoke finds the same sore spot it found yesterday, and you set your eyes on the notch of light at the top of the path where the clearing shows through the trunks, and smoke. Your smoke, standing straight up out of the chimney into the still morning, grey against the grey, and it is somehow, every single time, a thing worth looking at. One thread of smoke in 10,000 acres of trees. That thread is the whole argument. That's what your family has to show 3 years in. 1 column of smoke the forest hasn't put out. And this is the moment to tell you how the cabin came to be at all. Because you were there. You were 10, and you remember every hour of it. When your father bought this claim in the spring of 1835, there was nothing here but trees and the corner stakes and a blaze on a beach marking the line. For the first weeks the family lived in what the settlers called a half-faced camp. 3 walls of poles and brush, a roof sloped back, the 4th side open to a fire that burned day and night. You slept in a row like spoons, rain hissing in the fire, and your mother hung a quilt across the open side on the worst nights, and none of you, this is the strange true thing, none of you remember it as misery. Children don't audit. It was warm on one side and wild on the other, and you were all together, and that's a fair definition of home. Then, in June, the neighbours came, and in one day, the cabin stood, the raising. This is the great scene of the whole frontier, the one the old settlers all reached for when they wrote their memoirs, and the arithmetic of it explains everything about how this country worked. 1 man cannot lift a green oak log the size of a keel. 4 men can. So when a newcomer had his logs cut and hauled to the site, that part was his own work, weeks of it. The word went out, and every man within 5 or 6 miles dropped his own work and came. No pay, none offered, none imagined. Payment was the day itself. You came to my raising, I come to yours, forever, because none of us can lift a log alone. That's the true bank of the frontier. Deposits of sweat, withdrawals of walls. Your father's raising drew 11 men and their families. 4 of the best axemen were named cornermen, 1 to each corner, and they stood up on the rising walls all day, notching, cutting the saddle into each log end so it locked over the log below, no nails, no pegs, gravity and geometry. And the rest hoisted the logs up skid poles with forks and ropes and shoulders, and the walls went up a course at a time, and the corner men rode them up swinging their axes at the sky. Women cooked over fires in the open, a haunch of venison, pots of beans, johnny cakes by the stack. Children were everywhere and underfoot, which is how you first met the Cole grandchildren, and got a scar on your knee you have to this day. By dark there were 4 walls, higher than a man, square as a Bible, and 11 men ate by firelight in front of them, and told stories you were supposed to be too asleep to hear. Openings for the door and window were sawed out afterward. The roof of clapboards went on over the next week, held down by weight poles because shingle nails cost money that was corn seed money. Your father and Daniel split the puncheons, dressed them, laid the floor. The chimney rose stick by stick with all of you carrying clay, and the first fire on the new hearth was lit that fall from flint, steel and charred linen out of the tin box, the first fire that hearth has ever needed. Every fire since has been that fire carried forward, coal to coal, morning to morning, one unbroken thread of the same burning, 3 years long. Your mother said that first night, with the new light on the new walls, "There, now we're people again." Nobody asked her what she meant. Everybody knew. Now meet the neighbours, because in this country the word neighbour is load-bearing. 1/2 a mile east, through the woods, on a path your feet could walk blind, live the Coles. Ephraim Cole came into this county in 1821, when Indiana was 5 years old, and this township had, by his count, 4 white families, and he will tell you the count without being asked. He's somewhere north of 60, built like a gatepost, with hands so scarred and sprung from 50 years of axe work that they don't fully close anymore, and he has forgotten more about this forest than your father will ever learn, and this is the important part. He shares it without making your father feel small, which is kind of manners they don't teach anywhere. His wife is called Granny Cole by every soul in the township, including, as far as you can tell, herself. She is the nearest thing to a doctor within 20 miles. Midwife, herb woman, setter of bones, sitter with the dying. When Granny Cole's mare is seen tied outside a cabin, the neighbourhood knows something has happened, the way towns know by bells. A long mile west, on a newer claim, live the Bakers, Reuben and Nancy, married 2 years, a baby girl born last fall. Reuben is 24, strong as a horse, and proud the way only a young man on his first 80 acres can be proud. He'd sooner break his back than admit it can bend. Nancy is 19, Ohio raised, quick to laugh, and homesick in a way she thinks she hides. She misses her mother, and church with a roof, and streets. The idea of streets. Your mother sends you over with starts from the garden and errands invented out of air, because your mother knows exactly what the first years in the woods do to a 19-year-old 100 miles from her kin, and the old settlers' memoirs know it too. The men wrote about trees. The chapter the women wrote was called Loneliness, and they all wrote it. 2 households, half a mile east, a mile west. That is your entire society, week in and week out. That and the ones the paths themselves seem to remember. Hold those 2 names, Cole and Baker. This year is going to braid your 3 chimneys together like a rope. The morning you carry the water up, your father and Daniel are already out at the edge of the corn ground with axes, and the sound of chopping comes across the clearing in that steady 2-beat the whole frontier moves to. Chock, chock. Somewhere in the old settlers' books, a man says he heard axes in his sleep for 60 years. You believe it. The axe is the first tool of this civilization and the last. The rifle gets the stories, but the axe built the state. Your father's field war has 2 fronts. The first is the clearing proper, the 8 acres already open around the cabin. First the garden and truck patch, then the corn ground, all of it studded with stumps like teeth in an old jaw, which the plough swerves around and curses. And the second front is the deadening. Walk east from the corn ground and you come to it. 4 more acres where, 2 springs ago, your father and Daniel spent a month walking tree to tree with axes, cutting a ring of bark away around every trunk, chest high, all the way around, a hand's width bare to the wood. Girdling, it's called, and the deadening is what it makes. You don't fell the giants. A man alone with 6-foot oaks would die of arithmetic. You cut the life off where it climbs, in the ring under the bark, and then you walk away and let time do the felling. The first summer the leaves come out small and starved. The second summer they don't come at all. And now the deadening stands the way it stands this morning. 4 acres of grey dead trees, bare as masts, bleaching, drying, waiting, while corn grows down in the sunlight they're dying let through. It is the strangest looking place your world contains. A standing forest of the dead, rattling its loose bark in the wind, and it unsettles travellers, and the old settlers' children remembered being afraid of deadenings at dusk. But listen to your father walking its edge, knuckling the trunks like doors. That hollow knock is the sound of money in the bank. Seasoned where it stands, he says. That's next winter and the winter after, dry and waiting. Every year a few more come down in the storms and are cut to length where they fall. The rest wait their turn. A deadening is a woodshed built by patience. Next winter's warmth is standing out there right now, dead on its feet, drying in the wind. Keep that in your mind's eye. Come January, you'll want to know exactly where it is. April opens the year like a door. The snow goes, the creek runs loud for 2 weeks. The mud achieves a depth and a personality the old settlers wrote about with something near respect. And one morning your mother stands in the garden patch, looks at the black dirt your father spaded, and begins the part of the year where she plants 7 months of meals in the ground and defends them. Potatoes cut so every piece has an eye, beans to run up the corn later, cabbages started close to move apart, turnips, onions, squash. Herbs along the near edge where she can reach them from the door. Sage, tansy, horehound, boneset, and mark that last one. Boneset, a plain, coarse, bitter-leaved thing she tends as carefully as the roses she doesn't have. You'll learn what boneset is for before the summer's out. Everyone in Indiana learns. And in the corner of the truck patch your father harrows a strip fine as meal, and your mother walks it with her apron full of flax seed, broadcasting with a sweep of the arm that hasn't changed since Egypt, and Lucy and Willis trumpet in with their bare feet in a ceremony of sanctioned mud. Flax, a patch not much bigger than the cabin floor. Watch that patch, because it's the whole clothing industry of this family. Those seeds are next year's thread, and next year's thread is next winter's spinning, and next winter's spinning is the shirt on your back the summer after. In this cabin, a shirt begins 2 years before you wear it, in an apron full of seed. Town people buy cloth by the yard and will never once in their whole lives know what a shirt costs. You know to the seed. By mid-April you are barefoot, and you will now stay barefoot until hard frost, and I need you to understand this isn't deprivation exactly. Shoes exist. They hang by their laces from a peg, greased, waiting for winter and preaching. But leather is scarce, and cobblers are far, and shoes are for stopping frostbite, not mud, and every child in the township sheds them the same week the way trees leaf out. By June the soles of your feet are leather themselves. You can walk across stubble, across gravel, across the split face of the puncheon floor's worst ridge, and feel it only as information. The one thing you step around is the deadening in a wind, and that has nothing to do with your feet. Corn planting comes in May, when the oak leaves are the size of a squirrel's ear. That's the rule, that exact phrase. And the old settlers repeated it to their grandchildren so faithfully that it's in half the county histories in the state. Your father and Daniel cross-furrow the field. You and Lucy follow with the seed bag. 4 kernels to the crossing, a bare heel of dirt swept over each. 8 acres, hill by hill, bent double 2 days. Your back at the end of it is 13 going on 60, and there's a red groove across your shoulder from the seed bag strap, and you'd complain, except that your mother planted beside you all afternoon with the baby slung on her, and outworked you without appearing to hurry. There is a lot of that with your mother. You've stopped trying to solve it, and now the whole green machine is running, and the forest turns up its noise. Because when I say the frontier was silent, I need you to understand what that actually means. It means no wheels, no bells, no engines, and under that missing layer, a sound world so loud it startled travellers out of sleep. Spring dusk on your clearing sounds like this. The frogs first, from every low wet place, 10,000 of them in shrieking silver layers. Then the whip-poor-will, which begins the moment the light fails and repeats its own name. The settlers swore some of them passed 1,000 times without a breath, from so close to the cabin that Willis believes it lives under his bed. An owl asking its question up the hollow. The dog answering something you can't hear. And on some nights, far off to the north where the country stays low and wild, the sound that stitches every one of the old settlers' memoirs together, the sound they could still call up in their bones 50 years later, in warm parlours in a tamed state. Wolves, not close, almost never close. A long gathering howl, another joining it, a third, the voices braiding and rising and then gone, and the frogs who went silent altogether like a snuffed candle waiting a long minute before they dare start again. The wolves are real. Real enough that the state pays a bounty a scalp. Real enough that sheep in this township are penned like prisoners at night. But in your 3 years here, you have never once seen one. And neither, it turns out, would you ever. That's the documented truth of it. By the late 1830s, in this part of Indiana, the wolf was already more voice than animal, a sound falling back northward year by year, and the settlers' children remembered the howling all their lives and could count on one hand the times they ever saw the howler. So you lie in the loft under the shakes, in the dark, with Lucy's cold feet against your calf and the last red light of the banked fire breathing through the floor gaps, and you listen to them. And here is the secret you would never say at school if there were a school. It isn't fear you feel. It's something older and stranger and almost sweet. The sound of the wild world saying it's still out there, while you're in here, latch string drawn in, walls a foot thick, fire alive, family breathing all around you in the dark like a heartbeat with 7 chambers. The forest gives, and the forest takes. But not tonight. Tonight it just sings, and you sleep. At the end of May comes the event you've been waiting for since the salt gourd started scraping. The trip to the settlement. 12 miles east, where the mill road crosses the state road, there's a place with a name and maybe 40 souls. A grist mill on the creek, a blacksmith, a tavern that is also the post office, and Ledyard's store, which is a log building twice the size of your cabin and contains, as far as you're concerned, the entire manufactured output of the human race. The trip there and back with the ox team is a full day. Oxen walk at 2 miles an hour and negotiate with every mud hole, and it happens maybe 5 times a year, and this time, because it's the slack week between planting and hoeing, your father takes you. You're awake before your hand even reaches the ashes. What you carry to town tells you everything about how this economy works, because here's the thing, you have almost no money, and neither does anyone else. There's a jar with a few silver coins your father guards for the one debt that must be paid in coin. Taxes. Everything else moves by barter, and the wagon bed is your family's bank statement. 2 bushels of last fall's corn, a keg of maple sugar from the February camp, say 70 pounds, 4 deer hides, stiff and folded, a coonskin lot Daniel trapped over the winter, and a small linen bag your father handles like eggs, because it holds dried ginseng root. Sang, everyone calls it. It grows wild in the rich woods. You and Lucy hunt the shady hollows for it in late summer, and it is the one thing in your world that is pure cash, because, and the old settlers love telling this to disbelieving grandchildren, the roots you grub out of an Indiana hollow with a sharpened stick get barreled, hauled east, loaded on ships and sold in China. China. Your father cannot reliably get a letter to his own brother in Kentucky, but the fat man-shaped little roots from your hollow will cross the Pacific. Nobody in the cabin can explain why the Chinese want them. Ledyard pays around 25 cents a pound and doesn't explain either. The store, when you finally rock and jolt up to it, smells like everything at once. That's the first thing, the smell. Coffee and leather and vinegar and calico dye and tobacco and gunpowder, and the cheese under its cloth, all braided together into a single smell you would recognize with your eyes shut at 90. There are shelves to the ceiling. There are pins in papers and needles and buttons on cards. There is a bolt of calico printed with little red sprigs that you do not look at, because looking at it in front of your father would be a form of asking, and you don't ask. Now watch the trade. because this is the frontier's whole financial system on one counter. Ledyard weighs the sugar and offers 6 cents a pound in trade. Your father observes, mildly to the ceiling, that sugar was 8 cents in trade at the mill last month. Ledyard remarks on the quality of Kentucky sugar makers in a way that is technically a compliment. They settle at $7, $4.90 for the keg. The hides bring $1.10 together. The coon skins 40 cents. The corn he takes at 20 cents a bushel, which is robbery in a good year and normal now. And why it's normal now is a real piece of history. So hold on for 1 minute while the men talk, because they're going to talk about it anyway. It is the spring of 1838, and the whole country is broke. A year ago, May of 1837, the banks in New York stopped paying out silver and gold for their own paper notes, and the crash rolled west like weather. The Panic of 1837, the books will call it. What it means in Ledyard's store is this. The paper money in the cigar box under his counter is a lottery of lies. Notes from banks in Michigan and Illinois that were born and died inside a year. Wildcat banks, everyone calls them, because the banks kept their offices, people joked, wherever the wildcats lived, so no one could ever come redeem the paper. Ledyard keeps a printed banknote detector by the cash drawer, a little pamphlet reissued constantly, listing which bank's paper is good, which is doubtful, and which is worth exactly the ink on it. He checks every note a stranger offers, holding it up to the window light like a man reading bad news. And the state of Indiana itself, the men in the store agree, has gone money mad at the worst possible moment. 2 years ago, 1836, flush and confident, the legislature voted $10 million, borrowed, for canals and roads and a railroad. The great internal improvement system, everything everywhere at once. Now the loans are curdling, the contractors are quitting, and the ditch of the great central canal is standing half dug in more than one county, like a grave nobody paid the digger to finish. Within a year the works will all but stop. Within 2, the state will be unable to pay even the interest, and Indiana will spend a generation living down the debt. The men by the stove don't know those dates yet. What they know is that a neighbour took canal contractor scrip for a winter's work of his team and his sons, and the scrip buys about half of what it did when he earned it, and it's the getting worse kind, not the getting better kind. So hard times. But listen to what hard times means out on your clearing, because this is the part historians came to marvel at. Your family barely notices. You can't lose a job you don't have. You can't fear a bank run when you've never seen the inside of a bank. The corn grows regardless of New York. The cow doesn't read. The forest never heard of credit. Cash was always scarce out here. Now it's merely scarcer, and the difference between almost none and none is real. It's the difference in what the corn fetches, and it's the reason your father's jaw is set all the way home. But the cabin's economy, food and fire and cloth and meat, runs on labour and weather and neighbours, and not one of those 3 has failed. The old settlers, remembering these exact years, said it plainly. We were poor and didn't know it, because everything we needed we raised, and money was for taxes, salt, and coffee, which is precisely the list your father buys. Salt first, always salt first. A full bushel, 50 pounds, poured rushing into the sack your mother made for exactly this, $1.25 worth of trade. Your father pays it without a flinch, and here's why, and it's the arithmetic your whole winter stands on. Come November, the hogs are killed, and every pound of that pork lives or rots by salt. No salt, no pork, no winter. 60 years ago, Men on this frontier paid $5 a bushel and hauled it 100 miles on pack horses. The price has fallen and fallen as the rivers and the salt works reached west, and your father, who heard the $5 stories from his own father, buys his cheap dollar bushel with the particular satisfaction of a man beating history. "For November," he says, tying the sack. "Remember it riding home in the wagon between your feet. The whole trip, everything else is decoration. The salt is the errand. Then coffee. Green coffee beans, 20 cents a pound, 2 pounds only, because coffee is the cabin's one imported luxury, and it is rationed like medicine. Your mother roasts the beans in the spider skillet, grinds them in a mill nailed to the wall, and serves coffee on Sundays and for company, and the smell of it roasting is the official smell of occasion. Then powder and lead, a paper of needles, and then your father, squinting at the shelf like a man being robbed in slow motion, buys 8 yards of the sprigged calico you are not looking at. Your mother needs a dress, he says to the middle distance. You too, likely. You ride home the whole 12 miles with the bolt across your knees like a sleeping cat, and if the oxen took a wrong turning and walked to Canada, you're not sure you'd notice. A calico dress. There are girls in Boston with silk, and you would not trade one sprig. Dark catches you the last 3 miles, and the lantern swings on the wagon bow, and the forest goes by on both sides as a wall with sounds in it, and your father, who is not a talking man, talks about Kentucky, about his father's tales of the early salt scarcity, about how when he was your age he thought a store was a place rich men went. You mostly listen. Some of it you're too young for. Some of it you'll only understand at 40, hauling your own children home through your own dark. But you file it all, because that's what you are at 13, the family's second memory. And when the trees finally open and you see it, the paper window glowing gold across the clearing, one lit rectangle floating in 10,000 acres of night, your mother's shape crossing it, the smell of supper on the smoke. Something happens in your chest that you have no word for. The old settlers had one. 50 years on, in their memoirs, describing exactly this, coming home through the dark to one lit window in the woods, the hardest-handed of them wrote like men describing a church. Home isn't smaller out here. It's larger. It's most of what there is. June is the hoe. The corn is up, 8 acres of it, ankle high and helpless, and every growing thing in the old northwest that is not corn has personal plans for that field. So the family walks the rows with hoes, hill by hill, day on day, beheading pigweed and smartweed, pulling the morning glory that would strangle a stalk in a week, throwing fresh dirt to the roots. The sun gets serious. The deer flies find the back of your neck. Your palms, already hard, get harder, and the hoe handle takes on that grey polish that tool handles get from years of exactly one family's hands. Daniel works stripped to the waist and brown as the dirt. Your father works in his shirt because he is a grown man, and grown men have standards, and you work in your sunbonnet, which you hate with a pure and secret flame, because your mother has decreed it. Sunburn being, her words, the one crop we're not raising. It's dull, I won't lie to you, the old settlers didn't. Hoeing corn was the long grey middle of every remembered summer, but dull, out here, has a flavour town work never has, because the stakes sit right there in plain sight. That field is bread. You can stand at the end of your row in the evening, sweat stuck and itching, and see winter's meals standing in lines, green and actual. Almost nobody in the modern world ever again gets to see their food supply as one visible object. It does something to you. It makes the boredom holy a little, not enough, but a little. The cow, meanwhile, has her own summer arrangement. She wears a bell and forages loose in the woods. Everyone's stock runs loose in the woods. Fences here are built to keep animals out of crops, not in pastures. And every evening it's your job or Lucy's to go find her by ear and bring her in to be milked. You stand in the clearing at dusk, turning your head slow, fishing the woods for that one dull clank among the 10,000 sounds, and then you walk into the trees toward it, calling, and she answers nothing, and moves off exactly as fast as you approach, because she is a cow, and this is her one joke, and she has never once tired of it. The milk goes down to the spring house, the little log box your father built right over the spring branch where crocs stand up to their shoulders in water that runs 52 degrees in the dog days. It's the coldest place in your world. Green dark and dripping, smelling of wet stone and cream, and on murderous afternoons you volunteer for any errand that ends there, and stand a minute with your wrists in the water, and file the feeling away for August in the corn rows. And then, on an afternoon in the first week of July, the dog goes off like a powder keg, and everything stops because a stranger is coming up the trace. Understand? You can count on your fingers the strangers who pass in a year. Every figure on the path gets identified at 300 yards by walk alone. That's Reuben Baker's swing. That's the Cole grandson's jog trot. This walk is nobody's. This is a stooped man under an enormous shining tin pack, with a horse behind him carrying 2 trunks, and Willis is already running for the field yelling the news, and your mother is already smoothing her apron, and the whole farm rearranges itself in 90 seconds, because the peddler has come. The Yankee peddler is a documented institution, out of Connecticut mostly, walking the western roads with tin and notions, and the old settlers remembered Peddler Day the way town children remembered the circus. He stays 2 hours. He spreads a cloth on the shade side of the cabin and it blooms. Tin cups nested like silver eggs, pans, a coffee mill, combs, scissors, pewter buttons, thread, a paper of pins, penknives, 2 clocks he praises like suns, and ribbons, a little wheel of them, and one is blue. Not any blue. The blue between the smoke and the sky on a still October morning. Your mother trades him rags and a coin's worth of ginseng for a tin dipper, thread and a comb. Then she watches you not looking at the ribbon wheel, the same way you not looked at the calico, and she says, in a voice with no ceremony in it at all, and a yard of the blue, and pays for it with eggs, a yard of blue silk ribbon for no reason, not Christmas, not a birthday. In the whole ledger of this cash-starved year, it is the single unnecessary purchase, and that is exactly why, 60 years from now, if anyone asks what your mother was like, this is the afternoon you'll reach for. You keep the ribbon wrapped in paper inside the Bible box in the chest, there being no safer bank on the property, and you take it out in secret, at a rate you personally consider disciplined. Put it away for now. There's a party coming in the fall, and the ribbon knows it. The peddler also pays his way in the other coin, news. He talks steadily while he trades. Prices in Cincinnati, the canal works stopping, a comet predicted, a murder in Kentucky with details your mother edits by clearing her throat. Out here the peddler, the miller and the preacher are the newspaper, and everything they carry is weeks old and improves in the telling, and after he's gone the family will chew that news for a month, the way you'd make a ham last. And speaking of the preacher, the second Sunday of July he comes, Brother Sims. He is the circuit rider, a lean Methodist on a good bay mare, 30 years old and looking 50, who serves a circuit of a dozen preaching places scattered over 2 counties and gets around it every 4 weeks, whether or none. His whole establishment rides in 2 saddlebags, Bible, hymn book, spare shirt, and, this being 1838, a quinine vial and a lancet, because a circuit rider does a little of everything. The denominations bred a joke out here, and it's in all the books, whether so bad that nothing's abroad in it but crows and Methodist preachers. Brother Sims tells it on himself, from horseback, arriving in the rain. Preaching is at the coal cabin, the biggest room, the 2 glass windows, and it is the closest thing this neighbourhood has to a public event, so everyone comes, and comes early, and stays late, because the sermon is the middle of it but not the whole of it. Benches of split logs, children packed on the loft pegs like swallows. The bakers walk over with the baby, Nancy sits by your mother. Granny Cole hands boiled sweets down the row of children with the stern face of a woman defying commentary, and then the singing. And this you have to hear with 1,838 ears. There are maybe 3 hymn books in the room, so Brother Sims lines it out. He chants 2 lines, strong and level, and then the whole cabin sings those 2 lines back, and he feeds 2 more. Call and answer, call and answer. 30 voices in a log room with the doors open onto the green woods. The old tune swung slow and bent the way the frontier liked them. The old settlers, remembering, said you could hear a cabin meeting through a mile of timber, and that it was the finest sound the wilderness ever held. You're inside that sound, squeezed on a bench between Lucy and a Cole grandchild, and it hums in the log wall at your back like the wall itself has joined. Afterward there is dinner for everyone from every basket, out under the oaks, and the men talk crops and the women talk everything that actually holds the township together, and Brother Sims works the yard like a shepherd counting, who's ailing, who's expecting, whose boy has gone rough, who hasn't been seen. He stops by you where you're minding the babies on a quilt, looks at you a moment with those saddle-weather eyes and says, "Your mother tells me you have your letters. Read to the little ones then. A reading house is a lit house." And he moves on, and you sit there absurdly tall, deputized. Watch him ride off north at 4 o'clock to sleep at some cabin 20 miles on, and understand what you're looking at. A man doing this every day, all year, for about $100 annually when he's paid at all. Half these riders were dead before 40. The books say so plainly. Nobody out here has to be told. It's part of why the cabins fill for him. Courage is a sermon that needs no lining out. That night, in the loft, Lucy sings the morning's hymn wrong until you correct her, and then you sing it wrong together on purpose until your father's voice comes up through the floorboards with the 2 words, "That'll do," that have ended every loft rebellion in this family's history, and you sleep with tunes in your head and church clothes on the peg and the latch string in, and the whip-poor will saying its name, and its name, and its name. Warm enough, fed enough, safe enough. Midsummer, 1838, and the corn is high as Daniel's shoulder. Now comes the part of the year the old settlers wrote about with their smiles gone. August, the fever months. Every low, rich, watered country on this frontier, the river bottoms, the wet prairies, the creek hollows like yours, has a season, late summer into fall, when the ague comes. Fever and ague, said as one word, and when I say ague, I need you to understand that this is not a bad cold. This is the sickness of the frontier, the tax the country charges for its best land, and the emigrant guides discussed it as frankly as soil. Such and such a county, fine timber, good water, sickly in the fall. It goes like this, and the old settlers described it so uniformly, decade after decade, that the descriptions read like one voice. First the yawning and stretching, and an ache settling into the bones, then the chill, not a shiver, a possession. Teeth rattling, nails blue, a cold that no fire and no pile of quilts can touch. An hour, 2 hours of shaking so hard the bed itself walks, and this detail is in the memoirs again and again. The cabin's very poles rattle. Then the chill breaks into fever, burning, raving hot, the thirst enormous, and then the sweat drenching everything, and then it's gone. You're weak, wrung out, yellow-grey, but up, even working. And here was its signature, the thing everyone knew it by. It kept a calendar, every other day for the every other day kind, and so precisely that people planned around it. The books record it without a smile. A man would appoint court days, weddings, even preaching on his well days, because tomorrow at 2 he had an appointment with his chill. We know now what it was. Malaria, moved from blood to blood by the mosquitoes that boiled out of every slough and puddle of that undrained country. Nobody in 1838 knows that. Not the doctors, nobody. The universal belief, sincere, reasoned and wrong, is that the fever rises out of the earth itself. Miasma, the bad air of new ground broken and rotting, vegetation steaming in the sun. That's the theory the settlers act on when they shut the cabin tight against the dangerous night air, sealing themselves in, as it happens, away from the dusk mosquitoes, which is why the wrong theory half worked, which is partly why it lasted. I'll always tell you which is which. The suffering is documented. The explanation waited 2 more generations for its cure. The first well-known sound of the season comes in the last week of August from the west. It's the baker's dinner horn, blowing at mid-morning, when no dinner is due. 3 blasts, a pause, 3 blasts, the neighbourhood's oldest signal. Come. Your mother is out the door with her basket in the time it takes to say it, and she takes you, because you're 13 now, and this is the year you start learning the other women's work, the one nobody sings about. The baker cabin, when you duck in under the low lintel, is an oven with 2 fires of sickness in it. Reuben is on the bed, mid-chill. This ox of a man, this lifter of logs, shaking like a wet dog in January, grey-faced, hunting warmth in a pile of every cover the cabin owns and finding none. And worse than the shaking is his eyes, which are ashamed. Nancy is trying to tend him while her own chill walks up on her. You can see it come, see her jaw begin, see her set it against her teeth and lose. And the baby is crying the flat, hopeless cry of a baby who has cried a while, and nobody's arms are steady enough to be worth anything. Your mother doesn't say a word of comfort for the first hour. Comfort is words, and what's needed is hands. She sends you to the spring for cold water. She feeds the fire, strips and remakes the bed under Reuben, in the manner of a woman who could rebed a man mid-earthquake, gets the baby fed and down, gets Nancy horizontal before the chill fells her, and by the time Granny Cole's mare comes up the trace at that business-like single foot, someone met her on the mill path with word, the cabin is already a hospital instead of a wreck. Granny Cole's saddlebag is the pharmacy of the frontier, and its shelves are the woods, and one small precious store-bought vial. The woods part, bone set, there it is, your mother's coarse garden row explained, dried and steeped into a tea so bitter that the smell alone makes your back teeth ache. It's the frontier's standby against fever. The settlers learned it, the records say, from the Indians. and it earned its keep mostly by being violently, honestly awful. Sweat it out, they said. Reuben, on his well day, drinks it by the quart with the expression of a man paying a debt, and the store part for the worst hours. Peruvian bark, quinine, the powdered bark of a South American tree. The one thing on earth that actually strikes at the disease itself and priced accordingly. A few dollars the ounce when it can be had at all, sold by the dose at the settlement. This is what the real doctors give too. There's a real doctor 20 miles east, and for the ague nobody sends for him, because everything he'd do, Granny Cole is already doing at the price of thanks and a setting of eggs. For 2 weeks, your family and the Coles carry the bakers. It isn't dramatic. That's the thing I most want you to see about it. The sheer routine of the goodness. Daniel walks over every second evening and does the heavy chores in an hour, milks, hauls, chops the wood pile up past need, and walks home in the dark. Your mother sends you with a covered pail of soup, or fresh bread, or just sends you to hold the baby and wash the crocks and be a second pair of hands on the bad days. Granny Cole comes and goes on the mare. Nobody keeps an account. Nobody in the entire township would understand the suggestion that an account was a thing that could be kept. Next fall it may be your cabin with the horn blowing, and everyone knows it, and that knowledge is the whole insurance industry of the frontier. You pay your premiums in soup, and the ague brushes your cabin too, because almost no cabin gets missed entirely. It takes you mildly in mid-September. 2 chills 2 days apart, an afternoon of fever dreams in which the loom talks and the ceiling breathes, the sweats, and out. You keep your own appointment calendar for a week. Well day, sick day, well day. And on your well days you're in the corn harvest, a little wrung, a little yellow, entirely expected to work, because that is the actual documented normalcy of it. Whole neighbourhoods functioning at 2/3 strength every autumn, shaking in shifts, planning around their chills, laughing about it in the flat way people laugh at a thing they can't change. Didn't consider it sickness, one old settler wrote, just the fall of the year. By the first frost, and everyone knows this rule too, it lifts. The frost kills the fever the way it kills the flies, which fact fit the bad air theory perfectly, and the mosquito truth even better. The bakers come through. Reuben is up and splitting rails in October with the particular fury of a man erasing his own weakness. The baby fattens, and Nancy is different in a way you can't name at first, until you realise what you watched your mother and Granny Cole actually treat in that cabin. It wasn't only the fever, it was the loneliness, the 2-year homesickness, the being 19 and 100 miles from her mother, with a shaking husband and a crying child in one room in a forest. That was the disease under the disease, and the treatment was the horn answered. She blew 3 blasts into the woods, and the woods sent back, within the hour, everything it had. Nancy Baker stops hiding her homesickness after that fall. Not because it's gone, because she found out what she's homesick in. There are worse places to be far from home than a neighbourhood that comes when the horn blows. One more thing happens in September 1838, and I won't leave it out, because this channel doesn't, and because it came up the mill road with the news like everything else did. Your father brings it back from the settlement with the flour. Soldiers have been up north this month, at Twin Lakes, 2 counties above you. The state raised militia volunteers, and on the 4th of September they started the Potawatomi, Chief Menominey's band, the last of their nation still holding their village and their chapel on their treaty ground in northern Indiana, westward under guard on foot toward the Kansas country. Menominey, who never signed the treaty that sold his village, was put in a wagon, like a prisoner. Over 850 people walked. It is September, which you now know intimately means fever season, and the fever walked with them. The record of that march, kept day by day, counts its dead as it goes, and most of the graves it counts are children's. More than 40 died before Kansas. Hoosiers along the road stood and watched them pass, 2 miles of them, dust and soldiers and wagons of the sick, and the ones who wrote down what they saw did not reach for excuses. A priest walked with them. The state got the land. Later generations in Indiana would give the road its plain name, the Trail of Death. That is a documented thing that happened in Indiana in the exact month your composite girl was carrying soup through the woods to a sick neighbour. The frontier's neighbourliness was real, and I've shown it to you all year, and it was also, at the very same hour, a settlement built on ground being emptied of the people who named it, Indiana, land of the Indians, a name the state kept while arranging not to keep the people. Your family took no part and got no say. They hear it as news at a store counter. The men quiet over it. Your father quiet the whole ride home. But their $1.25 acres in that walking column are one story, not two, and the old settlers' histories, to their credit, mostly knew it. The county books that lionized the pioneers set down the removal too, plainly, because it happened in front of them. So it goes on the record here the same way. Both true, same forest, same September. You're 13, and you hear perhaps 1/10 of what the men say by the wagon, and you carry the word Menominee around for a week, the way you'd carry a stone in your shoe. Then the harvest takes the days, the way harvests do. But some nights, when the wolves start up far to the north, the sound lands differently than it did in the spring, and you don't have the words for why, and I do, and now so do you. The forest gives, and the forest takes, and some of what was taken was never the forest's to give. Frost comes the first week of October, and the whole country exhales. The fever lifts. The flies die. The leaves turn all at once that year. The old settlers kind of turning, maple scarlet and hickory gold under a blue that looks fired in a kiln. And now the year swings into the part you'd keep if you could only keep one season, the gathering in. October is when the cabin gets dressed for winter, and the first fitting is the walls. A year of freeze and thaw and driving rain has been picking at the daubing, and the family spends 2 bright days renewing it. The annual chinking, as fixed in the fall calendar as the harvest itself. Your father and Daniel mix the clay with straw and water in the old trough. You and Lucy ferry it in wooden buckets, and everyone works a wall, pressing fresh clay into every crack and seam, smoothing it with a wooden paddle or the flat of a hand, while Willis conducts independent operations that leave him clay to the eyebrows. You work with your face a foot from the logs, and you can feel the draft on your cheek at every gap before you close it. Little threads of cold air, the winter scouting the walls ahead of its army. You seal them one by one. There is deep, almost animal satisfaction in it. The same satisfaction the old settlers reached for whenever they wrote the fall chores. The pleasure of a den made tight. The window gets its winter dress the same week. Your mother takes the old paper out of the sash. A year of sun and lamp smoke has gone over it brown as a fallen leaf, and stretches new, thick pages pasted over the frame, then greases them with lard, working it in with her fingers until the paper turns from white to that soft translucence like the skin of a winter onion. Light through fresh greased paper is a specific thing there's no modern word for. Not clear, not dim, furred, honeyed, On sunny winter mornings it will fill the cabin with a glow like the inside of a lamp, and you will never in your life see that light again after this life ends, and you'd know it in 1 second, at 90, in your sleep. Daniel hauls a summer's worth of shagbark down from the wood edge and packs the loft's far end with it. The great loose slabs of bark the shagbark hickory sheds, dry as gunpowder, the best kindling and quick flame the forest makes. It's the family match safe, the reserve behind the reserve, and it goes up the pegs armload by armload until the loft smells like a spice box, and you and Lucy sleep all winter next to a wall of stacked bark like mice in a woodpile. Mind that bark. It's up there for a reason nobody's had yet. Then the corn, cut and shocked, the field turned overnight into that ancient site, ranks of teepeed shocks standing in their own stubble, and the pumpkins hauled in golden by the wagon load, and the hills of potatoes dug and buried in straw-lined pits, and hickory nuts and walnuts gathered by the sackful. That's you and Lucy and Willis paid in the eating. And at the end of the month, the two events that light the whole social year, a raising and the husking frolic. The raising first, because this year you get to see one again with older eyes. A new family has taken a claim on the far side of the Bakers. You never learn much about them beyond a name shouted in introduction and a swarm of children matching yours. And the word goes out the way the word has gone out for 40 years. And on the appointed morning, 14 men and their families converge through the woods, your family among them, wagon loaded with tools and food, and all 5 children scrubbed to a shine that will not survive the hour. And you stand there in the trampled clearing, 13 now instead of 10, and you watch the thing built. You watch the corner men take their corners, Reuben Baker among them this year up on the wall, notching like his egg never happened, showing the neighbourhood exactly what he's made of by the oldest means the neighbourhood recognises. You watch the logs walk up the skid poles on forked sticks and rope and shoulder heave, hear the corner men sing song, up she rises, ease her, home, hear the deep wooden clock sound once a minute of a saddle notch seating true, a sound like the forest itself agreeing to be a house. You watch your own father called on to saw the door and see with a small shock that he has become one of the senior men, one of the consulted. 3 years from newcomer to neighbourhood, that's the pace of this country. By dusk there are walls, and a fire in front of them, and 14 families eating around it, and a stranger woman standing where your mother stood in 1835, looking at her 4 raw walls with her hands folded under a chin. Your mother goes and stands beside her. You can't hear what she says. You don't need to. You've lived in the sentence since June of 1835. Then, 3 nights later, at the coal place, the husking frolic. Here's the economics of it, because every frolic on the frontier, raising, rolling, husking, quilting, is the same beautiful trick. Take a job too big for one family, add every family in reach, and it stops being work at all. Ephraim Cole's corn crop is picked and hauled in, a mountain of unhusked ears against the barn. And yes, Cole has a barn. 17 years on a claim buys a barn, and the mountain must become clean corn in the crib before the weather turns. Alone, the Coles would husk for 2 grey weeks. Instead, one night, 30 people and a party. The mountain is divided in 2 heaps, dead even. 2 captains choose sides, alternating picks, every man, woman and child sorted. And this is a documented universal ritual. The choosing is half the fun and all the politics. And then, at the word, Both teams fall on their heaps in a tearing, rattling fury, and the race is on. Lanterns on poles, frost in the air and everyone steaming. The dry husks shriek as they strip. The clean ears bang into the cribs like applause. The heaps shrink, the captains bellow. Somebody starts a song with a stroke to it, and both teams take it up because rhythm is speed. And you should know there is a rule in play, the famous one, and it is real, and it is everywhere in the old settlers' memories. Find a red ear, and you've won a kiss. A red ear of corn, they turn up, a few in every crop, and the finder waves it overhead to a roar from the whole barn lot. The young folks mine that corn mountain like prospectors. Daniel finds one. You will report with an honest heart that the roar embarrassed him past the power of lantern light to hide, and that a coal granddaughter had, over the preceding hour, moved a suspicious number of ears in his direction, and that you have filed this for use at a moment of maximum need, because that is what sisters are for. You wear the blue ribbon? Of course you do. This is what it was waiting in the Bible box for. The one night of the fall with lanterns and fiddle music and every young person of the township in one place. Your mother braids it into your hair by firelight before you leave, and says nothing at all in a way that says everything, and you are 13 with a yard of impossible blue in your hair at a corn frolic, and no duchess in this world ever wore anything better. That's not me being kind. Ask the duchess. The value of a thing is what it cost the people who love you. The ribbon was eggs, a peddler, and your mother's watching eye in July. It cost a fortune. Your team loses the race by a crib's width. It does not matter even slightly. Supper afterward is the coal's long table and every board groaning. Pumpkin, pork, chicken and dumplings, Johnny cake with real maple molasses, pies by the acre. And after supper the fiddle comes down off its peg, and there is dancing of the stamping, laughing, figure-calling kind in a barn by lantern light, and Granny Cole is persuaded onto the floor for exactly 1 reel to a standing ovation, and the little ones fall asleep in a row on the corn like puppies, Willis among them, cheek on a clean cold ear, and late, walking home in a lantern-swung line through the black woods, Lucy asleep on your father's shoulder, the fiddle tunes still going around in you like cider. You hear the wolves start up way off north, and the whole family stops, not in fear, in something else, and listens to the 2 sounds at once, behind you, faint, the last of the fiddle and the laughing from the coal place, ahead and far away, that long silver howling, the tame music and the wild holding the same cold air between them. That's the frontier. That's the whole thing one October night, one pair of sounds. You will live to see the state paved and railed and lit, and I will tell you now, you'll never once hear that particular duet again after these years, and part of you will listen for it the rest of your life. November answers October the way a bill answers a feast. The trees go bare, the mud stiffens, the light turns pewter, and there comes a still, cold, grey morning. Planned a week ahead, salt sack ready, water heating in every vessel the farm owns, that the whole year has been walking toward. Hog killing day. I'll be straightforward with you about this day, the way the country was. The hogs have run the woods all year, fattening free on the mast, the rain of acorns and beech nuts and hickory nuts the forest throws down every fall, so that pork out here is practically a wild crop distilled forest. And now, in the first reliable cold, 4 of them are converted into the family's winter. It has to be cold. That's the whole timing. Cold enough that the meat chills clean and keeps, not so bitter that hands can't work. The old settlers watched the sky for the day the way sailors watch for weather. The bakers come at dawn. This is swap work. Your family will owe them the same day next week. And the morning is fast, practiced, and unsentimental, and Willis is kept in the cabin with Lucy, and I'll spare the details for the same reason your mother spared Willis. It is sufficient to say the frontier had no first-person relationship with the word sausage. By noon the work has become what the day mostly is, which is not killing at all but a kind of enormous, urgent cooking. The scalding barrel steams. The carcasses, scraped clean and pink, hang from the big oak's low limb on gambrel sticks, and the whole yard turns into an open-air factory with every hand employed. And here, carried out from the cabin shelf with 2 hands, like the guest of honour, comes the salt, the bushel from May, the $1.25, the sack that rode home between your feet. This is its day, the day it was always for. The hams and shoulders and side meat, cut and trimmed on the big board table, get buried in it. Every surface rubbed hard, your father and Reuben working the salt into the meat with the heels of their hands, packing the pieces into the barrel in layers, salt below, salt above, salt in every seam, until the year's meat lies white as a snowfield in the brine to be. Get the salt wrong. Too little, 1 lazy corner, 1 warm spell, and February opens a barrel of rot and the family eats corn till spring. Get it right, and the cabin is rich in the only currency winter honours. Your father gets it right. He learned it from his father, who paid $5 a bushel for the privilege, and as he seats the barrel head he gives it 1 flat pat, like a man closing a good bargain, which is exactly what it is. May's silver traded to November for a promise of March. Nothing else waits, and nothing is wasted. The old settlers said it as a boast and meant it. Fat goes to the kettle and renders all afternoon into lard, poured shimmering into crocks. The brown, crisp leavings, cracklings, go to the children by right and are the official taste of November. Trimmings are chopped for sausage, seasoned with sage from your mother's garden row, argued over in the tasting like a treaty. Side meat is readied for the smokehouse, the little windowless log hut your father built 2 falls back, where a slow, smouldering fire of green hickory will breathe on the hanging meat for days, and the smell of that smoke drifting across the clearing is the closest thing the farm has to a flag, and the tallow, the harder fat saved separate, meets the cold kitchen's other great November ceremony, candles. Watch your mother do this, because it's one of her masterworks. Wicks of spun cotton looped over rods, a deep kettle of melted tallow, and then the dipping. Lower the wicks, lift, wait in the cold air while the film hardens. Lower again. Each pass adds a skin thinner than paper. It takes 30, 40 dips to build a candle, rods rotating in order so each hangs cooling while its sisters bathe. And your mother keeps the rotation in her head while also managing a baby, a fire, and Willis. By dusk there are dozens of candles hanging in pale ranks, and the winter's light is made, and rationed from the first hour, because tallow is finite and February is long. Candles are for company, sewing, sickness, and scripture. For every other purpose there is firelight, or there is the grease lamp, a shallow iron dish of lard with a wick lolling over its lip, smoky, smelly, faithful. Or there is the oldest lamp in America, a knot of pitch pine burning on the hearthstones. Notice what this day has been. Meat, light, soap grease, seasoning, a department store extracted in one cold Tuesday from 4 half-wild hogs and a bushel of salt. Town families buy their winter. Yours builds it in a day, and sleeps that night dog-tired inside the smell of smoke and sage, the richest poor people in America. November closes with one more machine, the simplest on the place, the hominy block, a stump by the door, its top burned and scraped into a bowl, with a wooden pestle swung from a springy pole above. Corn soaked in lye water from the ash hopper sheds its hulls, and then someone, Daniel mostly at shoulder work, pounds it in the block, thump, thump, thump into the fat white kernels that boil up into hominy, the frontier's other daily bread. That dull wooden heartbeat, thump, thump, carrying across a cold clearing, was the sound the old settlers used on each other as shorthand for the whole era. When two of them met as old men, one would say, "You could hear my mother's hominy block from your place." And that sentence held the entire lost world. The first snow comes the last week of November at night, and you wake to that unmistakable muffled brightness behind the paper window, and the world outside is new. The stumps wearing white caps, the deadening standing to the east like a fleet under bare poles, every dead tree drawn in charcoal and chalk. Willis is through the door at a run and flat on his back in it before breakfast, arms sweeping. Winter is here. The barrel is full, the loft is packed, the walls are tight, the candles hang in ranks. "Let it come," your father says at the door, reading the sky. "Let it come. We're ready." You will want to remember later that he said that. December folds the family in on itself, and the cabin becomes the whole world in earnest. The days shrink to a grey corridor between two long darks, sun up near 8, sundown before 5, and the work moves indoors, into the ring of the firelight, and the year's rhythm slows from the field stride to the hearths. And now the flax patch from April keeps its promise. It was pulled in August and has been through its long purgatory since, retted in the dew, dried, braked, swingled, hackled, each verb a week of work I watched you do without complaint worth recording. And what's left of that apron full of seed is a soft grey sheaf of fibre, like a hank of ancient hair. Now, in the long evenings, your mother's little flax wheel starts its hum, and this is the sound floor of the whole winter. The treadle's soft knock, the flyer's whir, the small wet sounds as she licks her fingers to twist the thread. You have your own seat at the great wheel now, wool, this year, from the Coles sheep traded for bacon, walking back and forth beside it, 3 steps out, 3 steps in, arm rising and falling, the big wheel purring, drawing the rolls into yarn. The old settlers reckoned a good day's spinning walked a woman 20 miles without leaving the room. You believe every mile. Your shoulder believes them individually. This is how the shirt happens. This is the 2-year secret town people never learn. Seed to sheaf, to thread, to loom, to linsey-woolsey to the needle. Every inch of cloth on every back in this cabin walked into existence beside a fire. When your mother cuts the calico dresses out at last, one for her, one for you, the scissors going through those little red sprigs with a sound like frost. She does it late, alone, hours late, because good cloth is cut when the children's elbows are asleep. The evenings settle into their winter liturgy. Supper early, stock seen to, latch string in. Then the fire is built up for the night's sitting, and the single grease lamp lit if there's close work, and the family disposes itself into the light like figures in a painting nobody will ever paint. Your father with the awl and harness leather, or shelling corn against the jack-handle. Daniel whittling axe helves, or nodding frankly asleep upright. Your mother's wheel going, You and Lucy carding wool into rolls or knitting. Everyone knits. 16 mittens and stockings a winter walk out of this room. Willis on the hearthstones, cracking hickory nuts with a flat iron under strict supervision. The baby asleep in the trough cradle with the firelight breathing over him. And stories. This is where the frontier kept its literature, right here in the fire ring after the wheels stop. Your father's rotation is small and perfect and demanded in order, Kentucky in his father's day. The panther that followed a man home along a ridgeline for 3 miles, just out of sight, crying like a woman. Every family in the township owns a version of the panther, and Ephraim Cole's is better, and everyone knows it and no one says it. Riddles. The Bible read aloud by candle on Sundays. Your turn now too, since Brother Sims deputized you. A reading house is a lit house. Some nights if coaxed your mother sings. Ballads that came over an ocean nobody in this cabin has seen, about lords and false lovers and ships going down, sung soft in the half-dark to a room of sleepy children on the edge of the American woods, which is more or less exactly how those songs crossed a continent. Christmas comes, and it is small and it is enough. Stockings hung at the mantel and found in the morning holding hickory nuts, a maple sugar cake, and, glory, 1 store-bought peppermint stick apiece, from a private reserve your father laid in back in May. 7 months of forward planning for 1 round of shining faces, a wild turkey for dinner, the bakers over at dusk with the baby, and songs by the fire, and the peppermint sticks worked with an economist's care to last the evening. Lucy sleeps with hers. Then the year turns 1838 into 1839, and January sets in with intent. The cold now is a working cold. The water bucket freezing, solid by the door inside the cabin, ice in the wash basin, the nails in the door white furred with frost by morning, the trees cracking in the night woods like far-off rifles, sap frozen and splitting the wood, a sound you know, but Willis has to be told and retold. The fire eats like a horse now. Feeding it is a job with no finish line, and the woodpile by the door shrinks visibly day to day like a thing being unbuilt. And late in the month, on a mild, soft grey afternoon, a thaw day, snow going wet, air almost gentle, Ephraim Cole stops on the path from the mill with his sledge and stands a while at the door talking to your father, and you remember afterward the way he kept looking at the sky over the deadening. "Sun's got a ring on it," he says, "and the smoke's been layin' low 2 days, and my knee's been preachin' since Tuesday." He gathers the reins. "This softness ain't kindness," he says. "Something's comin' behind it. Fill your wood box, Amos, and then fill it again. Your father, who has learned in 3 years exactly how much Ephraim Cole's knee knows, spends the whole next day with Daniel hauling and splitting, doubling the pile at the door, stacking a second reserve inside along the wall, until your mother's floor is half timber yard and nobody jokes about it. That night the wind goes around to the northeast and stops, the way a room goes quiet when someone important is about to speak. You wake in the dark, at your usual hour, and put your hand in the ashes and find the coals strong. And as you kneel there, blowing the little flame up out of its sleep, you hear it begin. The first dry whisper against the paper window, like sand thrown soft, like mice in the wall of the sky. Snow, the fine, small, hissing kind. The kind Ephraim Cole's knee had been listening to for a week. It will not stop except once to draw breath for 3 days. The first day is almost pleasant, and that's the trick of it. The snow comes straight down, small and endless, and the family does the morning in it. Stock fed, cow milked, water hauled, everything wearing a white shoulder inside of a minute, and by noon there's 8 inches of new powder, and Willis is a snow creature, and the clearing is soft and silent and lovely. Your father keeps going to the door, not saying anything, just going to the door and looking northeast and coming back. The snow doesn't slack at dusk, which snow here usually does, and at full dark it's still coming with that same patient, sifting, unhurried sound, like something being poured that has no bottom. And when your father draws in the latch string that night, he stands with the leather in his fingers a moment listening. In the night, the wind arrives. You hear it come up the way you'd hear a wagon coming. Far off first, a long hollow rush through the timber to the northeast, growing, and then it takes the cabin, and the whole dark world changes key. The chimney goes from its low flute note to a moan. The oaks lean and cry. The snow stops falling and starts travelling. You can hear the difference, hissing hard against the north wall and the paper window like thrown grain. In the loft, under the shakes, the storm is inches from your face. The roof planks tick and shudder. Fine snow dust breathes in through seams no daubing ever finds, and settles cold on the quilt, on your hair, and Lucy migrates into your side like a cat, and below you hear your father get up twice in the dark to feed the fire, and the second time you hear him stand there a while, and you know by his stillness he's doing sums. Morning, the second day, arrives without arriving. The paper window, which should be a soft grey lamp by 8, is nothing. A faint char grey, no more. It takes a moment, kneeling at the hearth with your hand in the warm ash, to understand why. And then you do. The window is buried. The snow has drifted up the north and west walls and sealed it like a jar, and the only true light in the room now is the fire itself. Your father opens the door on the sheltered side, and it opens onto a wall of white to his waist, and beyond it, the storm entire. And when I say storm, I need you to understand what a settler means by it, not the town word, where weather is something between buildings. The clearing is gone. The world is a white roar. You cannot see the stable 60 feet away. You cannot see the big oak. The air itself is snow moving sideways at a gallop, and the cold in it is not a temperature but a pressure, an intention, and it reaches through the open door in one breath and turns the whole room's warmth to memory. The old settlers' memoirs are full of these 2- and 3-day blows, and full too of their one-iron rule, learned the hard way and taught like scripture. In a whiteout, distance lies. Men died between the cabin and their own barns. That's documented county after county, the whole span of the frontier years. Turned around 40 feet from their door in air they couldn't tell from earth. So your father does what the rule says. He and Daniel run a rope from the doorpost, the well rope, knotted, hand over hand out into the roar, and find the stable by aiming and by luck and make it fast. And now the farm has a spine, one taut line, door to stock, and for 2 days they go and return along it like beads on a string, faceless in wraps and frost, hauling hay down, watering with snow melted in buckets, while the cow and the oxen stand steaming in the dark shed, with drifted snow to the sills, and take it all as stock does with enormous patience. Inside, the cabin closes around the fire, and the fire becomes the whole clock. There is no going anywhere. There is no seeing anything. There is the fire ring, and the family in it, and the storm on the walls like a sea on a hull. And here is where you learn what the woodpile arithmetic is really for. Because the pile by the door, doubled on Cole's warning, is buried and welded by drift. Each armload has to be dug and pried loose and comes in iced, and the fire in this weather does not burn wood so much as inhale it. The inside stack along the wall, your mother's sacrificed floor, goes down and down, log by log, like sand through glass. By the second evening, your father has quietly begun mixing in green wood to slow the burn, and the fire sulks and hisses and steams at it, and gives less, and everyone sits closer, and nobody says the thing everyone is watching. You'd think fear. It isn't fear, quite. I want to get this exactly right, because it's the heart of the whole night, maybe of the whole year. It is seriousness. The children feel it come into the room like a guest. The way your parents' voices level out, the way tasks get precise. Water is kept hot, wraps are kept dry. The baby is kept off the floor, where the cold flows in under the door like something liquid, and the sausage grinding of the wind is answered hour by hour by the small human sounds of a family simply proceeding. The wheels hum, your mother spins straight through the storm, and long after you'll understand that the spinning those 2 days was for the room, not the thread, the knife on the whetstone, the Bible got down and singing, because that's the other thing that happens the second night at the storm's very top, when the chimney is howling like a struck flute, and the loft is too cold, and every child is down in the one bed and the trundle by the fire. Your mother starts a hymn, low at the wheel, the lined-out kind from the Julie preaching, the kind built so that any room can answer it, and the room answers it. Your father's growl, Daniel pretending not to, Lucy's thin, true thread, Willis's approximation, a foot of log and clay, a fire, and 7 voices against the whole upended sky. And I will tell you a thing the old settlers knew, and mostly kept to themselves, because it embarrassed them in prosperous parlours. Those nights sung through at the pitch of the storm, sealed into the firing with everyone you loved within 3 steps. Those were, for many of them, writing 50 years on, the happiest hours of their lives. They didn't say it lightly. They'd earn the comparison. You fall asleep in the trundle with Lucy, in firelight, to the wheel and the wind, and you wake. 3rd morning, your hand already moving for the shovel out of pure habit before your eyes open, to a thing stranger than the roar. Silence. The wind has stopped. Absolutely. The world outside the walls has the enormous ringing stillness of a bell after the bell, and the cold has doubled. You can feel it standing in the room like clear water. The deep, blue, dead calm cold that follows these storms, the kind the almanacs and the memoirs mark with a black hand. The nails in the door are white to their heads. Breath smokes at the hearthside itself, and the fire is eating the last of the argument. The inside stack is down to bark and ends. The buried pile at the door is glaze and granite. And so this is the morning the loft pays out its secret. Daniel goes up the pegs and hands down armload after armload of the shag bark. The summer's whole spice-smelling wall of it, and on those dry slabs the fire stands up bright and sudden like a lamp turned, and the room lifts with it, and your father, watching the blaze with his jaw working, says to it quietly, "Well done." And it is unclear to you whether he means the bark, or Daniel, or August. But bark is quick heat, and no coals. It buys hours, not days. And the true bank, the deadening 4 acres of dry-standing wood, next winter and the winter after, seasoned where it stands, is 400 yards east across drifts breast-deep on a man. Your father and Daniel are wrapping for the trial of it, axe and rope, when Willis, stationed at the door crack as self-appointed lookout, announces, matter of fact, in the way of 5-year-olds delivering miracles, somebody's hollering, and there, faint, ringing off the new hard stillness the way sound only carries on deep cold mornings, a voice, 2 voices, and under them a sound you know as well as your own name, the deep complaining creak of ox yokes and runners groaning dry on snow. Your father is out the door to his waist in it, and up the buried line of the mill path breasting the drifts in slow heaves like a boat in seas, the coal ox team, Ephraim Cole walking at their heads in a frost-white beard not all of which is his, breaking the road, and behind the sledge, shovel on his shoulder, Reuben Baker, who has already been 1/2 a mile past his own trials this morning. Breaking the neighbourhood's road, that's the custom, documented in every district that ever wintered. After a great snow, whoever can move first moves, and the strong teams cut the track cabin to cabin, and every man joins as the road reaches him until the settlement is sewn back together, thread by thread, chimney to chimney. Cole pulls up his steaming beasts at the edge of the clearing and surveys your half-dug door, your standing smoke, your whole assembled family jammed in the doorway like swallows, and produces the line he has plainly been carrying the whole cold way over. "Saw your smoke," he says. "Figured you was alive. Came for the coffee," and your father laughs, one short bark out of a chest 2 days tight. And your mother is already turning for the coffee mill, the true Sunday reserve, because there was never in this world a coffee more owed, and you, squeezed in the doorway with the cold biting your face and the fire warm on your back, watch your father wallow forward and take Ephraim Cole's sprung old hand in both of his, and you file the picture where you keep the ones that matter. The latch string, stiff as a stick with frost, goes back out through its hole. First thing, before the shoveling, before the coffee, your father threads it through and lets it hang, and not one word is said about it, because none is needed. 3 days the string has been drawn in while the sky did its worst. The door sealed, the family curled tight around its fire like a fist around a coal. Now the road is broken, the world has neighbours in it again, and the string hangs down the door for any hand that needs it, and that little strip of leather swinging in the terrible bright cold says everything this whole year has been trying to teach you. We came through, the latch string is out, come in. The days after the great snow are, strange to say, some of the easiest of the whole winter, bright, blue, still, and busy in the pleasantest way work can be busy, which is together. Because deep snow, once the roads are broken, is not the frontier's enemy, it's the frontier's pavement. All year the forest floor is roots, mud holes and logs, and hauling anything heavy is a war. Now the whole country is one white floor, smooth as a shop counter, and every farm turns teamster at once. This is the documented hauling season, the weeks the settlers saved their big moving for, and your father uses it the way they all did. He and Daniel take the oxen and the sledge east to the deadening day after day, and the deadening does at last, in full, what it was made for. The storm itself did the felling. 3 or 4 of the big dead ones came down in the blow, dry to the heart, seasoned on their feet for 2 years, and lie there on the drifts like fallen towers, ready. Axe and crosscut talk all morning across the snow, that long 2-note conversation, zzz-ha, zzz-ha, and the sledge comes creaking back to the cabin riding low, load after load, and the woodpile by the door rebuilds itself into a wall, then a rampart, then a monument. Wood for the rest of this winter and a fair bite of the next. You ride the empty sledge out on the last trip of the day, because the ride is glorious, hissing over the blue-shadowed snow between the grey dead masts, and stand out of range and watch your father and your brother finish a cut and understand something you couldn't have said in words a year ago. That the mild afternoon 2 springs back when they walk those trees with axes, wringing bark in the sunshine, that afternoon was aimed at this one. That out here, warm has to be planned 2 years ahead of cold. That your father is not a rich man in any ledger Ledyard keeps, but in the only bank January audits, he is a man of property. The neighbourhood knits itself back together along the broken roads. Word travels sledge to sledge. Everyone came through. Chimneys all smoking from coals to the settlement. A stable roof down at the new family's place, raised again by the same 14 men who built it. Stock lost here and there, nothing worse. Granny Cole does her rounds on the mare where the track allows. Even Brother Sims comes through on schedule, Crows and Methodists weather notwithstanding, and preaches the Sunday after the roads open to the fullest cabin of the whole winter, because nothing fills a meeting like 3 days of everyone wondering, alone in the raw, whether the neighbourhood was still out there. It was. It is. Attendance is gratitude wearing its good coat, and your mother sends you along the packed path to the baker's with a crock of sausage, and Nancy meets you at the door with the baby on her hip and colour in her face, and keeps you an hour by the fire just to talk, and does not once, you notice, and report home with the air of a spy bearing dispatches mention Ohio. February settles in, cold but broken-backed, the light coming back a few minutes a day, the icicles on the south eave growing all afternoon and dying all night. And late in the month there comes a particular kind of day, sun with real weight in it, snow going soft and loud underfoot, the air suddenly smelling of wet bark and possibility, and then a night that freezes hard as a skillet. Then another day the same, and another night. Freeze and thaw, thaw and freeze. Ephraim Cole, meeting your father on the mill path, doesn't even say it as news. He just lifts his chin at the sun and says, "Sap'll be climbing," and every child in the township comes up like a struck match, because that swing of the thermometer, that exact pulse, warm day, hard night, is the signal for the sweetest fortnight of the frontier year, sugar time. Here's what's been waiting all year in the low ground north of the deadening the sugar bush. 40-some hard maples scattered through a few acres of hollow, each one wearing your father's old axe blaze. The healed grey scar he cut the first spring to mark the sugar trees, so they could be found and known in any season, the way a shepherd knows faces. All year they've just been trees. Now, for 2 weeks, they are the closest thing this economy has to an orchard of money. Because remember, the store counter in May, 70 pounds of maple sugar was the biggest single credit your family had. Cane sugar is bought, is cash, is dear. Maple is free for the boiling. So on the frontier, the sweetness of the entire year, every cake, every sweetened cup, every candy a child ever tastes, comes out of this fortnight, and everyone calls the place the same thing, the sugar camp, and camp is the word. This is the great documented holiday that is also work of the settler calendar, and the old settlers wrote about it, every one of them, with the frost melting right off their prose. The whole operation moves out to the hollow. The big kettle's hauled over on the sledge, the little half-faced shelter of poles and clapboards re-roofed where it stood since the first year. Firewood cranked into a rick, and for the better part of 2 weeks the family half lives out there because sap, once it's running, doesn't keep banker's hours, and neither can you. The tapping is your father's and Daniel's work, an auger hole bored a couple of inches into each blaze trunk, slanting up, and a spile driven in. Spiles are whittled from elder or sumac shoots, their pithy hearts punched out to make a spout, and there's a box of them saved year to year, plus new ones Willis is permitted to help punch, which occupies him beautifully and ruins only a few. Under each spile a trough, the shallow dugout basins split and hollowed from short logs years ago, the same family of vessels as the baby's cradle. Because on the frontier the sugar trough is simply one of the shapes wood wants to take. And then the sap comes. The first drops ring on the dry wood of the trough, slow as a clock, tink, tink, and then faster on the good warm afternoons, every tree in the hollow ticking away at its own tempo, 40 water clocks in the bare woods, and that sound, the old settler said, was spring itself clearing its throat. The sap is clear as creek water and barely sweet. You have to boil it down roughly 40 to 1, 40 buckets of sap to 1 of syrup, further still for sugar, which is why the camp exists. And the gathering of it is yours and Lucy's. The neck yoke again, buckets again, tramping the crusted snow from tree to tree, emptying troughs into the barrel on the sledge, hour on hour. It is the same work as hauling water from the spring, exactly the same, and it feels nothing alike, and you know why, and it isn't complicated. This water is sweet. The sun is warm on your back for the first time since October. School is out forever because it never existed, and at the end of the path is a fire with your family around it. Now, the fire. Because the campfire is where one small ceremony happens this year, and you've been waiting for it since the first page of this story, whether you knew it or not. The camp is a quarter-mile from the cabin. You can't carry the hearth-fire's coals that far through the woods, in a wind, not sensibly, and your father doesn't try. Instead, on the first morning of the camp, he takes down from the mantel the tin box, the flint and steel and charred linen, on the little god's one feast day of the year, and carries it to the hollow, and kneels in the trampled snow with the whole family standing around exactly as if something were being christened, and strikes. Spark, spark. A fat orange spark sits down in the char cloth and glows. He folds it into the toe, lifts it, blows, that same long patient breath you use on the morning coals, the family's one inherited music, and the toe fumes and catches, and a new fire, the year's only new fire, stands up in his hands in the open woods. There, he says to no one and everyone, still know how, and the fire that boils the sugar is its own fire, born of flint in the snow, and something about that is so right that nobody thinks to say it. The hearth fire is the old year, carried unbroken, coal to coal, through blizzard and fever and every dark morning of your kneeling, and the campfire is the new year, struck fresh in the open air with the sap rising all around. The frontier didn't write its own symbols down. It didn't have to. It lived inside them. The boiling runs day and night at the peak of the run, and the nights are the part you'll keep. The big kettles hang from a pole on forked posts, sap rolling gold over the fire, steam pouring up white into the black branches, sweet fog drifting through the whole hollow, so the very woods smell like a kitchen in heaven. Somebody has to tend and skim and feed wood till midnight and past. And everybody wants to be somebody. Daniel and your father trade the true night watches, but the early dark belongs to all of you, family and neighbours both, because a sugar camp at night draws the township like a lamp draws moths. The coals come, the bakers come. Boiling sap wants watching, not muscle, so the watching becomes sitting, and the sitting becomes stories and singing and hot syrup tried in tin cups, and old Ephraim Cole, lit from below like a prophet, tells the panther story with the panther 2 ridges closer than in your father's version, as is his right, 17 years senior on this ground. And you make wax. Of course you make wax. This is the frontier's one universal confection, and it needs no equipment but winter itself. Syrup boiled thick, thrown hissing in loops onto clean-packed snow, where it stiffens on the instant into chewy amber ropes, and you pull it up cold and scalding, snow on one side, sweet on the other, and eat until wisdom or your mother intervenes. Willis, veteran only of sugar seasons he was too small to remember, is present at the creation. You get to watch your little brother meet maple wax on snow for the first time he'll ever remember, by firelight, past his bedtime, and his face does a thing that the whole year of this family's work was, when you audit it honestly, more or less for. Nancy Baker sits on the sledge edge in the firelight with her little girl asleep against her, taffy pull of amber in her fingers, laughing at Cole's panther, really laughing, the unguarded kind, head back. And your mother catches your eye across the fire for half a second, and neither of you changes expression, and it is an entire conversation. The horn was answered. The winter held. Ohio has quietly lost the argument. By the end of the run, there are cakes of new sugar cooling in every mould the family owns. Hearts and diamonds from the carved moulds Daniel whittled, plain rounds by the dozen from teacups, a keg packed for Ledyard's counter come May, syrup for the year, and one whole small heart-shaped cake that your father presents to your mother with 2 hands and mock ceremony, and that she accepts the same way, and that you never once afterwards see either of them eat, and that will still be in the chest, wrapped in the calico scraps years from now. Some sweetness isn't for eating. Some sweetness is for keeping where you can know it's there. The sap slows, the buds swell red in the maple tops. The tree's own signal that sugar time is over, sap gone bitter with spring, and the spiles are pulled and boxed for next year. The kettles scoured with sand and hauled home, the campfire drowned with snow water and stirred black, and the woods you walk home through, sledge creaking behind, are not winter woods anymore. Something has turned. The light is longer. The creek is talking again under its rotten ice, and on the south bank of the path, in a patch of bare, wet leaf mould no bigger than a table, Lucy finds it and shouts like it's gold, because it is. Green. The first green. The little blunt spears of the wild leeks, up through the leaf rot, absurd and unkillable. The year is coming back around to where you came in. One more walk before we put this year to bed. Late March, 1839, a Sunday, the first true warm one, the whole world dripping and shining, and Ephraim Cole comes by the cabin after dinner and asks your father, in the offhand way men of his vintage ask for the things that matter to them, whether he's ever taken the girl up the knob. The knob is the one piece of high ground your world owns, a steep, stony hump above the creeks he spend, a half-hour's climb, too poor and too proud to farm, which is why it still wears its original hair. The 3 of you go up it together, Cole first, setting a pace uphill that quietly informs you what 60-odd frontier years leave in a man's legs, and you come out at the top through a stand of wind-bent cedar onto bare rock, and turn around. And there it is, the whole of it. The only time in your entire year you see your world from above instead of from inside. Forest. That's the first fact, and nearly the last one. An ocean of it. Grey-purple with spring, rolling away level to every horizon like the sea it will someday be compared to by people who never saw it. Treetops to the edge of the sky, north, south, east, west, no steeple, no road you can make out, no smoke of any town, and set into that ocean, small as stitches in a grey quilt. The clearings, you count them without meaning to. There, southwest, that square of stubble gold with thread of blue rising. That one is yours. That thread is the fire you knelt at this morning and every morning. The one carried coal to coal for 4 years now, and there's the coals' smoke east of it, and the baker's west, and 2, 3, 4 more you can name the families of, and off at the world's edge a faint grey smudge that is the whole settlement, mill and store and tavern together, maybe 9 marks, in the entire visible surface of the earth. Everything human your year contained, the raising, the frolic, the fever nursing, the broken roads, the sugar fires, happened inside those few stitches, and all the rest, horizon to horizon, is what the stitches are sewn on. When I first climbed up here, Ephraim Cole says, not looking at you, looking at the country, 18 and 21, there was my smoke, and one other, and I wasn't but half sure of the other. He lets that sit. The wind moves over the top of the forest below you in long, slow, silver waves. The way wind moves over wheat, and you can hear it, a mile of trees breathing at once. Man fights the woods so hard, so long, he says, he don't notice he's winning. Then one year he stands up somewhere like this and counts smokes, and the count's gone past him. He works his sprung old hand, the one that won't close, opening and shutting as far as it goes. First you fight the forest girl, then you bury folks in it, then you win, and then... And here he does look at you, and his eyes in that seamed face are surprisingly young, and surprisingly like your father's on the night rides. Then you miss it. Nobody tells you that part. I'm telling you, you're young enough to carry it. You don't fully understand him. You're 13. You're not supposed to. You file it where you file the things that wait. But I'll tell you what he's looking at, because I'm allowed to stand outside the year in a way none of you on that rock can. You do not yet know. None of you know that you 3 are standing inside the last years of the thing itself, that this ocean below you, the great hardwood sea that made every wall, every fire, every trough and spile and puncheon in this story, is already, quietly, in its final human lifetime. The axes you can hear on a still day from 4 farms are the same axes that will, in your own old age, simply finish. The men who write the county histories 50 years from now will interview the survivors of this exact moment, and those books all record the same bewildered arithmetic, that the fathers spent their lives killing the forest, and the children spent theirs forgetting it, and by the time anyone thought to miss it, it lived only in the memoirs, in the phrase the old settlers remembered, and in odd spared corners like this knob. Not one of them, writing in their soft parlours in a farmed and fenced and railroaded state, could quite believe both worlds had fit inside one lifetime. And every one of them, describing the vanished woods, wrote like Ephraim Cole talked on that rock. Like a man describing an old enemy he'd give a great deal to hear breathing again. That's tomorrow's grief, though, and it belongs to tomorrow's people. You climb down off the knob into the world where the forest is still the given fact of everything. Walk home along the roaring creek between trees 6 feet through, and step back into your own clearing at dusk exactly as the light goes copper. Cabin, smoke, woodpile, stumps, the cowbell tonking somewhere in the near woods, Lucy and Willis shrieking at some game among the stumps, your mother's shape crossing the gold paper window. 1 year. You came into this story kneeling at that hearth in the dark of a March morning, and the year has gone all the way around its wheel and brought you back. Raising and planting, hoe and fever, frolic and salt, storm and sap, and here it all is again, beginning again, the same clearing, the same 9 smokes in an ocean of trees, everything the same, except you. You're 14 this spring. You can spin a day's yarn and read the book aloud and nurse an egg and mind a camp kettle and be trusted now to bank the fire yourself, which is in fact tonight for the first time exactly what your mother, without one word, just a nod at the shovel, asks you to do. So take the evening slowly. It's the last one we have. Supper is mush and milk and the end of a ham that was alive in the beechwoods a year ago and has fed this family since November. The stock is seen to. The clock is wound, your father's hands going through the small ritual with the key, the same 11 turns as every night of your life. The book is read, your turn, by one candle from the November ranks, rationed all winter and lasting, which pleases your mother in her ledger-keeping heart. Daniel goes up the pegs first, then Willis half asleep on your father's shoulder, then Lucy complaining gently on principle about nothing. The latch-string is drawn in, the candle is pinched, and then it's you, kneeling at the hearth, where this whole year began. You rake the coals together the way you've watched her do it 1,000 mornings from the corner of your eye, gather them into their glowing hill, the heart of the old fire 4 years old now, the same fire struck from flint the fall the cabin was new. You draw the grey ash over them, shovelful by shovelful, packing it close, smoothing the mound with the flat of the blade, tucking it in. The room goes from ember light to almost dark, just one red seam glowing at the base of the mound like a secret being kept, and the cabin settles around you into its night sounds. The logs ticking as they cool, a peg creaking in the loft as somebody turns over. The little wet click of the banked fire breathing under its blanket, your family breathing under theirs. 6 sleepers and you, 18 feet by 16. Everything you love in one room, in one clearing, in one ocean of trees, under one dark sky going down toward frost. You're warm enough, fed enough, safe enough. Hold there, in the dark, 1 more minute, because I want to tell you what happens to all of this. Gently, the way you'd tell it to someone almost asleep. Centuries will pass. The forest below the knob will go down, field by field, and the fields will fill with towns, and the towns will run together, and the state that was younger than Daniel will grow old and paved and lit all night, so bright that nobody in it will ever again see the dark this cabin sleeps in. The cabin itself will fall, or be pulled down, or, a few of them here and there, be jacked up and hauled off and rebuilt behind velvet ropes, with the little brass plaques, where school children will file through and be told, not quite accurately, how hard and how simple everything was, and the strangest afterlife of all. The cabin will become a legend while your family is still living in it. Next year, the summer of 1840, this is real, look it up. The whole United States will fight a presidential election underneath a picture of a log cabin. Log cabins on banners, log cabins on ribbons and teacups and whiskey bottles, log cabin songs in the streets of cities, all of it boosting a wealthy general the voters were invited to imagine in a cabin exactly like yours. The rooms your mother fought smoke and mud in all year will become, within 18 months, the country's favourite symbol of itself. That's how fast America turns its hard mornings into its bedtime stories. About as fast as this channel does, honestly. But some of it doesn't turn into souvenirs. Some of it just keeps going, quietly, under everything. People will still bank their fires in wood stoves, in furnaces, in the little glowing screens they'll fall asleep to, centuries on, listening to stories like this one. Still put the year's sweetness by in jars and pretend it's for company. Still walk food through the dark to a sick neighbour's door. Still lie awake in the smallest hours listening to their family breathe, doing the sums of wood and weather and money, and deciding on no evidence but nerve that there's enough. The tools change. The vigil doesn't. The vigil never changes. And when someone says to a friend at a parting, "You've heard it or you'll hear it. The latch string is always out for you. That's this door. That's this exact leather string on this exact oak door. In this dark, handed down through the generations of the tongue long after the doors themselves were gone. A whole world can shrink until it fits inside one saying. This one did. You lived in it a year. It held. So let the year go now. It's finished, and it was enough. Tomorrow there will be water to carry, 140 steps, and the yoke will find the same shoulder. Tomorrow there will be planting to begin again, 4 kernels to the hill, and the flax to sow, and the garden to defend. Tomorrow the whole green wheel starts over, the same as last spring, the same as next spring, the same as all the springs stretching out ahead of this family like clearings not yet cut. But that's tomorrow. Right now there is only the dark cabin, and the banked fire keeping its red secret under the ash, and the whip-poor will starting up somewhere out past the stumps, saying its name and its name and its name, slower now and further, the way sounds go when sleep is winning. Let it come. Let sleep take you the way it took that girl in the loft of a one-room cabin in the Indiana woods, almost 200 years ago, with the day's work done and tomorrow's not yet born, with everyone she loved within 3 steps of her, breathing. Let the clearing fade. Let the forest lean in close around the walls the way it always did, an ocean of trees around one buried coal of light, holding it, not putting it out. Let the wheel and the axe and the hominy block go quiet. Let the wolves have the far ridges. Let the sap climb in the dark, 40 water clocks ticking slower and slower and stopping. Let your own thoughts bank down now, like the fire, gathered in, covered soft, one warm seam of light way down under the grey, safe till morning. You're warm enough. You're fed enough. You're safe enough. You've earned this rest. The whole long year of you has earned it. Take it, and dream of whatever dreams may come. Good night.